even the structure of like going to a bishop is like, okay, you want to repent for something, you got to go to this bishop, right? If you're a kid who feels like, oh, I got horny and now I feel bad, I masturbated to porn, I feel bad, then you essentially you got to go sit in this office with this fucking 50-year-old man who didn't go to divinity school or anything, and then like tell this dude, and then the way that it works is this dude asks you questions about it. That's not something that should be happening at all. There should not be an old man and a kid in a room, no supervision, and him asking you sexual questions.
Begging for more details.
Dude, don't say gay at school, though. You know.
Yeah, but exactly. Yeah, like, don't be gay, but like, we're gonna have this old man ask you the things that make you horny. Like,
what? And you said you saw boobs, right? Now, describe these boobs to me. Was one of them slightly bigger than the other?
Do you think former Catholics are the only people keeping the phone sex industry alive?
They got to. They have to.
Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam. Casey is on vacation this week, as I was last week. And I believe he announced it and probably made fun of me the entire time for it, but I was at Disney with my family. So I had to find another co-host for the week. And it's not Jeremiah. And maybe I'll make fun of him this entire podcast because now I have the opportunity to. But I figured, why not debrief my Disney extravaganza experience with none other than a Disney character himself, the kid from Up.
Oh, wow. Funny. I love it.
Mike Valdez.
Hello. Hello. I'm excited, man. This is going to be really funny. You started off making me laugh because you were like, oh, Casey was making fun of me because I was on vacation with my family. And I'm like, what kind of a horrible human being being with your family?
He is a horrible human being, but that's not why he was making fun of me. Yeah,
you probably love your family. You probably love your family too, you fucking nerd.
Yeah. Maybe. Who knows? After Disney, dude, Disney changes things. I feel like Disney is one of those things where like you leave, there's many things you could leave with. It's like, I mean, one of which could be lots of souvenirs, maybe like a life-altering experience for the magic and beauty of it. And then you could also just leave with like a negative symbol in front of your bank account, or like, I don't know. I left with diarrhea a little bit.
Nice.
And probably a divorce. Maybe you could leave with a divorce, depending on.
You probably could, yeah. Leave with one less kid.
Yeah. My God, that almost, dude. Yeah. Oh, day one at Disney.
Yeah.
We were like in line to go out to where we were eating, and I turned around and I'm like, "Fuck, where's Sebastian?" And I looked at my wife, and
your son, not
me.
The crab.
Yeah.
Where's Sebastian? I've been waiting for a meet and greet all goddamn day.
Yes. We just missed him. God damn it. Cancel the trip. We're going home. No, and so we were there with family friends, and so I ran up to where they were thinking he was with them, and he wasn't. That's the most like heart-dropping,
of course,
I think I'm going to die feeling in the entire world. So you start yelling, everyone's looking at you like that bitch lost his kid. That guy, those kids, they suck.
It's like the episode of Full House where they lose Michelle.
Yeah, it's it's like walking through Disney with a giant sign above your head that says, "I'm a bad parent."
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because to be fair, you don't need to lose your kid to have that sign, because there are plenty of bad parents like at Disney, and people that are just like questioning why they became parents as they're at Disney. You know, like the last time I went was during Christmas time. So I went to the Mickey's Very Merry Christmas party, which is dope because they give you like cookies all night and like an eggnog and hot chocolate and like a whole bunch of stuff. It's really cool. But it was nowhere near your trip, because your trip you did all 4 parks and
Yeah, we did it all. We did, so Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Epcot. We did a day in Universal, but got the park hopper pass to do both sections of the Harry Potter world, and then
dude, you
on
guys
Animal
killed
Kingdom.
the Orlando.
Like, we thought about doing less, and then I'm like, we're not going to go back for a long time. And to think about, like, it's like to do, we almost did 4, and then we're like, to just do an extra day, like, yeah, it's going to be a lot, but at the end of the day, like, it just feels like not worth skipping out on something. Cause we left Friday night, Friday the 14th, and then came back on, well, technically, I guess it was the 22nd. So we were there for a while, and then, dude, the flights back, we had delays both times. Like, so I got in, we had flight delays going there and coming back, and they were already evening flights. So I got home at like 3:00 this morning, and it was a disaster. Like,
That's
with
insane.
like kids, and like the flight back, dude, I have never experienced turbulence. I felt like I was on a fucking roller coaster ride. Like the stomach, that dip, that stomach drop feeling. The flight was, my kids were crying. People on the plane were screaming, dude. Like, it sounded like you were on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And kids were crying. Some people were throwing up, you could hear. And like, it's just, the plane would do the drops. And if you weren't buckled in, you would have hit the ceiling. Like, you really get that roller coaster drop feeling. And then it goes back up and goes back down. And it only lasted, I mean, it's hard to gauge time and something like that, but it probably only lasted 15, 20 seconds max, because we were going up through a lightning storm, and then you got above it, and you looked out the windows, and you looked down, and you just saw the lightning exploding in the clouds, and it was really fucking cool. But my kids still were not having it, so we had to close like all the airplane windows so they couldn't see it. And it was a scary ass flight.
It is really scary, man. Especially like it's weird. Like, the last time I was on a flight with turbulence like that, the woman next to me was like, I do this thing, and I probably shouldn't do it. But I do this thing on flights or anywhere where I'm with a lot of people in public, where I wear my headphones and I pretend like I'm listening to music, but I just try to see what everyone's saying or seeing if they're talking about me. And and this woman was talking so much shit about sitting next to me the whole time.
No way.
Like, oh yeah, she was talking shit the whole time. And I just played it cool. I played it cool the whole time. And then when turbulence happened, I was like, that's right, bitch. You're sitting with me.
You whispered in her ear, "We're going to die today."
Yeah.
And you whip out a deck of tarot cards, and you just flip. What's the death card? You just flip that one over and over again.
Yeah. I said she was very scared, and I was like, well, let me lead you in prayer. No, I was kidding. I'm kidding. But I made up this lie, which, like, to be fair, it's not a lie, but like I was like, well, turbulence has nothing to do with like the plane, being bad or whatever. Like, it's just, we're just trying to get through a storm. Like, that's why it's going to feel weird for a little while. And she was like, the lightning is all weird. And I was like, just look at it like God's taking a picture of you, and like, and then for some weird reason, she was like, okay. And like actually believed it or whatever. And in my heart, I was like, I shouldn't have to be nice to you because you were talking shit the entire flight about me.
Yeah,
but
you should have scared the shit out of her.
I should have, yeah. But I'm getting an extra jewel in my crown when I get to heaven.
Yeah,
so,
you are,
because of that. Yeah, and those are worth a lot, apparently.
Yeah, the exchange rate's off the chart these days, especially with the dollar plummeting, right? Inflation.
That's what I heard.
Shit.
Yeah.
So
jewels in your crown of the new Bitcoin. That's what I heard.
The new Dogecoin.
Yeah, the new Dogecoin.
Don't tell Casey that. He will try to buy all of it and then wait until it doesn't have value.
So you tell me everything. So you start with Magic
So
Kingdom?
we did. And so I can tell you everything and then also think about it in hindsight. And I think that
Sure.
starting with Magic Kingdom was the right choice because
Of
it's, first
course.
of all, it's really big.
It's huge.
Oh my God, dude. Some of these parks are fucking insane.
Of
But it's the most like child friendly. My
course.
son, he's turning 6 this month. And so but he's young-ish. Like he's a fearful boy. He doesn't
Mhm.
really like anything that might be potentially scary. My daughter is
Sure.
very, very like, I want to do all the roll. She's 6 and she's like, I want to do all the roller coasters. I want to,
Mhm.
she has all these things that she wants to do. So,
So
um,
no Haunted Mansion for your son.
no, he did not. He skipped out on the Haunted Mansion.
Mhm.
No, we brought him. Sorry, dude. Also, here's the thing about Disney and spending a week in the hot sun every day, all day.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like you just stepped into like this rift in the space time continuum. It's like,
Mhm.
I almost feel like I didn't have that vacation and that it was like a dream in a fugue state of some sort.
It's
Um,
I think there's a Mr. Show sketch about it where like there's a news reporter and they're not at Disney but they're in Florida and they're talking about how hot it is and they go, it's so hot, watch this, and they get an egg and they fry an egg on the cement. He's like, that's how
crazy.
hot it is. And it's like, it actually feels like that. Like you could probably fry an egg on the floor. That's how hot it is.
It's it I mean, it's April, but it was still like mid 80s.
Yeah.
But when the humidity's high and stuff,
Oh yeah. It feels
it's rough.
disgusting.
But yeah, so like where what was it? Oh yeah, so we do the Peter Pan, It's a
Mhm.
Small World,
Of course.
all that stuff. And but what was crazy is like that's where so they split all their best roller coasters up. They have like one of their best roller coasters in every park.
Yep.
Uh, so Tron is in Magic Kingdom, and
Mhm.
I was like, I was shocked. My daughter was she was up for doing Tron, so I took her to do
Okay.
that. That was one of the funnest fucking roller coasters I've ever been on in my life.
Yeah, you're on it's like a motorcycle type deal, right?
Yeah, and I
Super
couldn't
cool.
believe she wanted to do it. In line the whole time we're in line, she's like telling me she's scared. I'm like, we
Mhm.
don't have to go on it. Like, if you want to, if you want to leave, we can just leave anytime. Like until
Yeah.
you're locked into that ride, you can leave anytime.
Mhm.
So we're like standing in line, like we're at the gate. Where next? And she's like, I'm scared. I don't know. I'm scared. And I'm like, do you want to leave? And she shakes her head no. And I was like, okay, so we'll do it. And we get on, and I've never seen, like, she looked like she just stared death in the face by the time we got off of it. Like, no affect, just blank face, like saw a ghost.
Right.
And I'm like, I look over at her. I'm like, did you like it? And we haven't even gotten off yet. Like, this is when you like slow down and you say, because the ride is sick. I mean, it doesn't lift you up into a drop. It's one of those like magnetic. I don't know if it's through magnets or like
Mhm.
air pressure or whatever. But you start out flat. You're basically riding a bike, and it goes like 0 to whatever within 2 seconds. Like you're just
Yeah.
flying, and
Mhm.
it's all like you're in a building with all the lights, and it feels like you're in Tron. It's the
You're in Tron,
coolest
yeah.
fucking ride.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I keep looking over at her, and she's just no affect, just blank face the entire ride. I look at her when we're done. I'm like, did you have fun? And she just, no facial expression, all nods her
Mhm.
head up and down.
Wow.
Then we get off the ride, and I'm like, are you okay? And she's still just nodding her head yes. After like 10 seconds, she gets the biggest smile I've ever seen, and she's just like, that was the funnest roller coaster I've ever been on. Like, she
Yeah.
loved it. She couldn't once the shock of like what it was wore off, she couldn't stop talking about it
Sure.
and had grinned ear to ear for like 5 minutes. It was
Yeah. There's
so
no
cool.
better feeling, and I could say this as an adult because I've done Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. There's no better feeling than being scared for over an hour
Yeah.
and then doing a thing that lasts what has to be 80 seconds at best and realizing that you're still alive at the end. it's like adrenaline just goes all over your body, and you're like, yes, like I did it.
Yeah.
It's like nothing was ever going to happen to you, but like especially at a place like Disney, like there's thousands upon thousands of people that are legally required to make sure that you don't die. So like so
that
like
helps.
so that helps. I mean, it's not like you're in a carnival, and it's you're like, well, I do trust that 16-year-old, but this is rickety thing looks kind of weird.
That
Like
folds up into a car. It's like a fucking transformer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Transformers with
So,
no personality.
yeah. So next day you're at Hollywood Studios, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, that's next day. Oh, I'm pretty sure, thinking back, I said my daughter's 6. I do know how old she is.
Yeah.
She is in fact 7.
Mhm.
I feel like if anyone listens to this that knows my family, they'd be like, this guy really is a bad dad. He doesn't know
you're
how old his
good.
kids are. She did everything.
Yeah,
but it's cute because
no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, give me like the best of highlights, with everything.
yeah. So Hollywood Studios was a blast
Mhm.
because what I didn't know about Disney, because I went to Disney when I was like 6. Obviously,
Right.
rides have changed. The way that they present rides have changed, but um,
They didn't own everything back then.
yeah,
Well,
that's true.
Now you're like Star Wars. Like, I mean, they own everything. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, you go to Animal Kingdom and you're like, so there's a zoo and Avatar. Like, this is really weird. Like
It is crazy how much they own, and then that being combined with not combined, but Universal neighbors it like. That was
Very much
obviously
so,
like a
yeah.
plan, right?
Of
Literally
course.
anything that's anything is owned between those two.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like the Star Wars rides were just
Mhm.
fucking fun.
Outrageous. Dude,
It,
what's it called? Rise of the Resistance is
yes,
like
dude.
probably one of the coolest rides you'll ever go on in your whole life.
It really is.
There's 2, and I won't spoil it for people that haven't been on there, but there's 2 audible oh my god moments where like you can't believe what you're seeing
Yeah.
because you're like in it. And you're like, "Oh my god, this is absolutely insane." I'm trying not to spoil it, but
You no matter how much you explain it, it will never spoil it because when you actually experience it, it will just
dude,
blow
to
you the
see a
fuck away.
full size AT-AT, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you see a full size AT-AT, like you're seeing a row. I mean, just so many stormtroopers. Like, I mean, there's basically 3 elements to this ride. Like there's like it's not just one vehicle. Like you're in like you're essentially taken hostage at one point. And like, I mean, it's such a cool concept for a ride.
It
Like
really is.
yeah, it's like one of the coolest things. And also that immersion, basically what happened, and this is my opinion, what happened was Universal and Warner were like, yo, we're going to make Harry Potter. And that's when the word immersion started. Because when you go into Hogwarts, which you have been,
Yeah.
there is no more Orlando, Florida. Like you are now in Hogwarts. Like that's literally where you are. And that's what Disney wanted to do. They were like, we're not going to let this Harry Potter, like, take all of our money. We're going to, and for, literally, there was not even a grain of sand from Orlando, Florida. Like everything is from whatever planet Batu, I think is the name of the planet that you're on.
Yeah.
I mean, so much so that like the food, like the if you buy a Diet Coke, it looks like a thermal detonator.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like literally, it is like you are on another planet. It is incredible. Like, like it's so cool. Did you end up going to the cantina?
No, so we were supposed to because we had thought it was like a restaurant like experience,
Kind
whatever
of
that you would
is.
eat at. But what we didn't know is that's really just like bar food and drinks, and that it's a shit
Exactly.
destination for kids.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
ended up canceling that reservation to go there.
It's straight up like that part of Hollywood Studios and Epcot is made for adults.
Yeah, it feels more like it. I think. Oh, one of the things I was saying before is so when I went to Disney when I was young, first of all, I was afraid of everything. So I'm very sensitive to how my son feels. My wife is like, he'll be fine. We'll just do it. And I'm like, there's a couple times where I was like, we're not putting him on this ride.
Yeah.
One of which was the Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
That would have been a bad ride for him. He would have
absolutely. It's a bad ride
not
for
come
me.
off of it.
I'm 35.
And but even bring him on what's the one that we just talked about from Magic Kingdom with the ghosts?
Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion. I was like, I don't think this is a great idea for him, and he hated it. So it's like I was really sensitive to how he felt, because I remember not going on really any rides when I went as a 5 or 6 year old, and but what I just was blown away by was how I'm thinking, like, the best rides are going to be roller coasters, and some of them were great roller coasters, but I guess I just didn't expect the experience driven adventure. That these rides, they're not rides. They're not like, let's go fast and then go up and down. And they might incorporate some of those elements, but it's really like, here's a screen that covers your entire face so you can't see anything else. And we're going to just throw wind at you and splash you with water, and you're going to feel like you're actually in this. Like at the in Epcot, like the Ratatouille ride, you're like, Ratatouille, that's going to be a kid's ride. And you're like, no, you're a fucking mouse in this ride. And you're crawling under like stoves and through pantries, and it, like, even under the stove, they ignite the fire of the stove and you feel the heat from it. You're like, everything about these rides is so immersive that I'm just like, I'm sitting there laughing with a smile on my face. Like, it's like with Rise of the Resistance, you're just like, holy shit, I can't believe this is a thing. I can't believe this exists, and I'm experiencing this. The only regret I have is, like, I didn't go on anything more than once, just because of our, like,
of course,
packed schedule and kids.
You had so much. You had so much to do. Absolutely. And okay, so there's a few things I have to ask you about, just like as a theme park person. Did you have butterbeer?
I had butterbeer. Now, when I was in New York, when did I go to New York? I don't know. Several months ago, we went to New York for a weekend, back maybe in September, last September. They have the Harry Potter store there, and they sold butterbeer, and I hated it. It was like too sweet.
Not the same, bruh.
Couldn't do it. It actually, surprisingly, the butterbeer is the same.
Oh, is it?
I mean, I
will say this: it is sweet as balls.
It's
like,
sweet.
It's like the sweetest thing you've ever had in your life. Like, it's a lot.
Feel it in the back of my jaw. Like, but then they had frozen butterbeer, and that was more enjoyable. I did like that a bit more, but even then, I drank a little bit of my son's, and that was all I could do.
They have literally everything in butterbeer flavor. Like, they have butterbeer ice cream, butterbeer fudge, butterbeer, like, fart candles. Like, they have everything. They have everything in butterbeer scented or flavored stuff. It's wild. So, okay, so I had to ask you the butterbeer question. I'm trying to think. Just skipping over to Universal, because we're already at Universal. What were your favorite parts of Universal?
So we mostly spent the day with Harry Potter World.
Sure.
So Harry Potter World has, I think it was 3 rides between the 2 parks. It's not a lot of rides. They have the Hagrid one, and that's like a roller coaster, and that's a good roller coaster.
That one's really fun. I like Gringotts the most. That's my favorite.
That was great. And then there's the other one where you in the castle on the other side. I'm bad at remembering the names.
I don't like that one, because it's like, it like kind of makes you feel like you're holding a broom. And if you're a person who, whether you identify it as a man or not, if you have undercarriage, it is going to hurt you. So like, that's just what it is. And it's like the ride was made for people, and then they forgot, like, oh wait, people have ball sacks, right? Like,
wait, which one is this that you're thinking of? Because there's one.
It's Harry Potter's escape from the thingamagoo or whatever it is.
I think you're right. I think I'm forgetting what that's like. I'm used to them being in like the you just sit in that little car. But this one, I
Yeah.
think that one actually you pull the thing down
Yeah,
over
you
your
pull the thing
shoulders.
down, and then it has these things that you hold on to, and it makes you feel like you're holding onto a broom. Right?
Okay.
And
I
then
actually don't think I held on to those. I thought
Yeah.
it was supposed to feel like I was masturbating the whole time, and I was like, oh, I don't think this is the right place for that. So
Right.
I just held on to the shoulder things.
Right.
But that one, you're like, you go through like chased by Dementors and
Yeah, it's
stuff like that.
fun. It's fun. The track is up in the ceiling, so you're
Yeah.
like you don't see what you're doing. Like it literally feels like you're flying the whole time. It's really cool. And then there's moments where like you see a screen, and then like you make a sharp turn, and then there's a real animatronic of a dragon, and you're like, whoa, like this is wild. Like
Yeah,
stuff
man.
like that.
God, just the experience of these rides is so fun. It makes me like not like as I get older, I don't do as well in roller coasters. I got to space
Same.
them apart. They do make me dizzy. They do give me headaches.
Same.
Especially if they're intense with loops and flips and shit like that. So
Yeah.
I paced the roller coasters. I probably only did one a day. And now the ones that did, compared to Six Flags, the roller coasters at Disney are just like smooth.
Oh
They
yeah.
are smooth ass roller coasters, man.
Did you do the Hulk?
No, so I didn't do Hulk. The only ones outside of Spider-Man that we did, outside of
so fun.
we did the Spider-Man ride. The only ones outside of Harry Potter World, we did Spider-Man, which is a good ride.
Very, very fun.
My son actually liked that one, even though he said it was a little scary.
That's another one of those mind trick ones where like it's like screens and then there's real stuff happening around you.
Yeah,
and it's very cool.
It's crazy what you feel like because
because
you never leave the fucking ground.
Like how it can make you the car just tilts a little bit and then they blow wind and somehow you feel like you're falling off a 32-story building.
Exactly, it's unbelievable.
Like it's unreal how they do it. Like I mean, you are completely safe. Like, but it really makes you feel like you are falling off a skyscraper. Like, it's wild.
And then
Spider-Man catches you.
So with Animal Kingdom, that was our last thing. We did Animal Kingdom, and a lot of the rides at Animal Kingdom.
Had to do Avatar, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the rides at Animal Kingdom were a little slow. Like a lot of them, they have the safari, but my kids, my daughter's like, Animal Kingdom was my favorite. And
yeah, because animals rock, dude. Like
they do. And, dude, the gorillas are just so when we got to the gorillas, there's like a couple of adult gorillas and there's like 3 babies, and the baby ones were hilarious. They were
awesome.
They were just, one of them just runs up and knocks the other one over. The other one falls on its back and throws its feet up in the air dramatically. Like it's like watching kids play, and it's fucking freaky.
It's awesome. Watch. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's super fun. Yeah, did you guys do the dinosaur ride? That's a fun one.
The dinosaur? No, we did I think we did all the rides at Animal Kingdom, but I don't. What's the dinosaur ride?
Animal Kingdom. So they have one where you're like essentially on an expedition and you time travel to like get a dinosaur. That's one of my favorite rides at Animal Kingdom. That isn't an Avatar thing.
We did do that one. That one was fun. It's like you're in like a bumpy car and you're through a dark cave and you are trying to like get an iguanodon to time travel back with you.
It's super cool. Yeah, it's really
cool.
fun.
And then there's like a river one where you just kind of, it's like a little log flumy thing where you just.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I think it was a Jurassic Park themed like river ride.
Yeah.
And
we're getting close to the time that we have to go into our episode, and if any listeners are excited about who you're interviewing, they've just completely skipped over this part. But what I was going to say was this is the most important thing, at least for me. How many lives did you save while you were at Disney? Did you get to preach the word of God? Or
no? I'm glad you asked. Before I answer that, I do just want to do a quick shout out because I think the only ride we didn't really cover was the Avatar ride.
Yeah,
and how that was just a mind blowing experience in the way that that's another one where you don't leave the ground. And it only tilts you probably like 12 degrees forward and backwards.
They kill it with immersion.
Yeah.
Like
if you look around, you look to your left and your right when you're in it, like it feels like the screen is endless, but you can
Yeah.
see the other people looking at it. But if
Of
you're
course.
looking forward, you can't see anyone to your left or your right. You
Mhm.
are in this dome, this like looking at this domed screen. And I don't know. I thought it's you can't even explain what the experience is like. You're just like, I'm flying at 75 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and you go near the ocean, the waves come up and you get misted with water, and
Yeah.
like, god damn, dude. I
It
could have
is
stayed on that
it
thing for
is really
hours.
it is really funny how, like, you see that and, like, so many people that don't go to Disney frequently are very like, "But that's a kids thing, like, why do adults like it?" Like, adults go and they don't even have kids. Now you get it.
Yeah,
Now you
because
get it.
that's
Like,
better than a roller coaster. I'd rather do that than like, that roller coaster with the big drop. I'll do that once and then my head hurts. I want to sit and immerse myself into these worlds. I
yeah, you
wasn't
can
even a
do
big
that
Avatar fan.
you can do those Pandora rides like 1,000 times and never get bored of it because you see something new. Like there's always something new. There's an animatronic that you missed, or the animatronic is doing something new, that you
Mhm.
didn't see. Like there's so much going on. Of course, like I'm not one of those Disney adults that's like gonna get married there and like stuff like that.
Which
But
I saw
sure,
people doing.
yeah, there's a level of Disney adult that I'm not that person. But I understand adults that don't have children that like going to Disney every now and again because it is really fun, and it's a fun thrill that you can't really explain unless you've been there
And
because it seems like you're describing a dream in a way.
yeah, it really is, and I honestly think it'd be a lot of fun to go without. I could see what the appeal of going without kids. Like it's so magical
Sure.
and kid friendly and kid oriented that like going without my kids while they're young feels like it'd be like you're cheating as an
Yeah.
adult. Like this isn't how you're supposed to do
Well,
parenthood. But
listen, if you're gonna go without a kid, you go to Epcot, do the Food and Wine Festival, and
yeah.
get litty like a titty because it is wild. You get to drink around the entire world. For anybody that hasn't been, there's like little pavilions of all over the world, and you can have alcohol from literally everywhere around the world and
Yeah.
food from everywhere around the world. I mean, it is wild.
Yeah, I got a few drinks there. That was one of the few places I really did some drinking.
You
Otherwise, I'm
have
like
to.
too
You
angry
have
about
to.
spending money after like day 3. I'm like, just blow my fucking brains out already.
Yeah.
Like
I'm so tired of spending money. Wait,
it
honey, let me
hurts.
spend $35 on this cocktail from Germany because I've never had it before.
Yeah, the spending money actually started to become painful for me after day 3.
Sure.
Like after day 1, I got with the check for one of the those like character experience diners where it's like a flat rate and they just keep bringing
Mm,
you food. Look, if my kids ate a lot, but they ate like 3
nothing.
bites of food and you get charged $40 for them, you know? And
Mhm.
after I got the check for that, looked at my wife and I was like, I don't want to see another one of these for the rest of the week. Like they go to
Dude,
you and
yeah,
because she
I
doesn't
wish
care. She'll just keep, oh, let's do this, let's do that. She doesn't, her time. I mean, we've been saving for this, but like we paid for everything, like our tickets, our flights, that
Mhm.
had all been paid for prior to it. So then like, but we had saved for it. But even then, I'm like, I'm actually physically ill over how much money I know we're spending. And I know how much I think we're spending, and I know how money works. So whatever I think it is, add 20%, and it's probably
Yeah.
that or more. And you're like, oh my God, I can't. And by the last day, we didn't even have a theme park. We're just killing time until our flight. So we went to like Disney Springs. It's like a outdoor mall kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Did you guys go to Gideon's?
it's like, no, but it's like, no, get the kid's face painted. Now
Yeah,
get some ice cream, and ice cream's $15 a person.
of
You're like,
course.
kill
That's
me.
all
Just
for the
fucking kill it. Can we get on our goddamn plane? I don't want to spend any
It's
more money.
well, it's salt and straw. So like, you're they got biscuits and gravy flavored ice cream. Like that's the thing. Like that's the whole thing about salt and straw. Dude, you missed out. And like to be fair, you might not have been able to do it, but Gideon's is so dope at Disney Springs. It's a cookie like bakehouse type deal. And
Okay.
by far one of the best cookies you'll ever eat in your entire life. Like their cookies are a pound, and like chocolate chips all over. They put salt on their cookies, so like it's like the savory sweet in every single cookie that they make. And so they have like different things, like they have, you know, the cookie of the week, and they have limited edition stuff, and like, you know, when you walk in, it's very like Tim Burton-esque, you know, type deal, so everything is very gothic looking and like all that stuff. But yeah, their wait time is like 3 hours minimum, you know, when you're trying to get a cookie there.
That's
So,
crazy. 3
but
hours for a cookie.
gotta be honest, worth it. It really is. It really is. My my one of my best friends, he had a wedding that I went to, and it was during that time when I went to Disney, and I went to Gideon's for the first time before, and then I found out at his wedding he had Gideon's cater his wedding, dude. It was
Wow.
like, it was the greatest day of my life. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, his wedding cake was a Gideon's wedding cake. It was so awesome.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I did intentionally ruin people's flights by witnessing to them, but I did wait until the turbulence started. I was like, do you know where you're going to go if you die tonight? And they're like, fuck, it's over, isn't it?
I know that you saw me with my headphones on, but I didn't have my music on, so I heard you talking shit. And what I wanted to say was, do you know who Jesus Christ is as your personal Lord and Savior?
Dude, my biggest hope now is someday on a flight. I remember being at Liberty, when I was at Liberty University, people would talk about, like, if you're taking a flight and you're out witnessing to people, like, you have their attention for a couple hours. Like, you're just not like that's a real lost opportunity. And you know, you not taking that opportunity could be the reason they go to hell, and they would like lay on the guilt, which is awful. And then I would think about that, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, God damn it, why don't I ever get to sit next to somebody who tries to share the gospel with me? Because I think my approach would be to act really interested, get saved at the end of the flight, and then like give them a hug afterwards and whisper in their ear, "Gotcha, bitch." And then that'd be it.
You know, people, whenever there was this video that went around of this, like, of these kids that had to have been from some Christian college that whipped out their acoustic guitars and just started doing praise and worship on a flight.
Dude, after seeing that, the only thing I could think about was how the 9/11 hijackers got the wrong plane.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There were a few years too early, too. But yeah. But to be fair, like, whenever when I see that, when I heard you say the whole thing about like Liberty saying things like that, those are the kind of people that it creates.
Yeah,
people like
or the
that.
John Chows of the world who just
people who are just like, you know, dude. Like, at the end of the day, like, there's a difference between like listening, like, for example, like if I like, you know, South African grunge metal, you know, and I'm listening to it on my headphones, I have every right to listen to it on my headphones. But it becomes a problem when I subject an entire plane to listening to whatever it is I'm listening to. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to have whatever beliefs you want. Nobody's stopping you, you know, but like, are we really starting?
Maybe the enemy.
Well, yeah. but are we really starting, like, you know, even if it was someone with an acoustic guitar who was just playing Wonderwall, I would want to die. You know what I mean? Like,
just shut the fuck up and sit down. We're on a goddamn airplane.
It doesn't matter that it was worship. It's that it happened at all. Like,
if somebody farts too loud on an airplane, they should be thrown off. Never mind, gets up with an acoustic guitar and sings.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, man. I mean, yeah. But anyway, this has been a fun conversation. And
yeah, man. Thank you so much for joining me for this intro. I think I don't know. I got to talk to Casey, but I might. He might have just lost his job. Is all.
Okay.
So you might be replacing him.
Okay.
Sorry. Just be prepared for that call.
Yeah, that's what happens when you start hanging out with your family too much, you fucking nerd.
But no, you were perfect for this. I'm so glad you were free, because
of course.
I can't think of anyone else I would have liked to debrief my Disney trip with. So
I had such a blast.
So the guest this week is a stand-up comedian named Skyler Higley. He was a former staff writer for Conan. He's currently a staff writer at The Onion. He's got a comedy album streaming on Spotify called Saltwater, and he is hilarious. He's very funny. He grew up Mormon, which I know for you real Christians isn't Christian, but it's Christian adjacent. And when I heard one of his bits where that information got slipped in, I realized that I had no choice but to reach out, because I had found him a little bit before that. And every time I find comics whose bits I love, I'm like, God, I go through their profiles and their TikToks, and I just hope and pray that the Lord allows me to stumble across a video where they talk about their Christian upbringing, because then it gives me an excuse to reach out to them. So Skyler was one of those. He was a really fun guest, and you should absolutely follow him on all social media platforms because his jokes are hilarious. And you should also look for wherever he's doing shows, because if you're around, you should absolutely go see him. I'm looking forward to him coming out to my way. So if you're not in our Discord, you can find the link to that in our Instagram page through our link tree. You can follow us anywhere you want and leave us a review. Reviews are great. You're doing all right, but I'll be honest and say we don't have enough of them. So just give us more. I want more. Reviews. Also, I'm broke after Disney, so if you want to Venmo me some money, I'm not going to simp too hard and post it, but just shoot me a message and be like, look, I'd really like to support your ministry, and I'll send you my Venmo. That's fine. I mean, and this is all you'll hear about it. I'm not a simp, so go fuck yourself. And enjoy our conversation with Skyler Higley. Hey, everybody. We are back with our guest, Skyler. Skyler, what's going on, man?
Hey, it's me.
It's you.
No, not much. I'm good. Chicago's rainy,
Chicago. That's what I was going to ask. I thought you were in Chicago. And all I knew was Central Time, but then I was going through some of your videos and I was like, I saw Laugh Factory in the back, and I was fairly certain that was in Chicago.
Yep. The Chicago Laugh Factory. Doing great right now.
That's like there's a billion of those though, right? I mean, they're all right.
Yes, there's the one on Sunset, the original one, and then there's Long Beach and Chicago and Las Vegas and
Okay.
Probably a couple others. I don't know.
See,
probably
they started franchising and
like
went downhill.
West Palm Beach or something like that,
Yeah.
Chicago is one of those places. I grew up in Michigan, and it was like Southern Michigan. And everybody, now I live in Kansas, everybody assumes that Michigan got, just these horrendous winters and stuff. And it was pretty mild. Like Chicago gets the winter that everybody thinks the northern states get.
Oh yeah, it's not. Well, I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
There's a little foreshadowing for everyone if you can't figure out what we might start talking about.
Yeah. The winters there are not they're not anything to, they're pretty crazy. You don't mess around with the Salt Lake City winters either. You get hella feet of snow, and the difference here is you're getting a lot of lake effect wind and stuff, so that sucks just trying to walk around. But Salt Lake City, you got that where it's so cold, and if your car was in a garage, you gotta scrape off the ice and turn it on and wait for it to get warm as you're driving to work, and it fucking sucks, and you're just freezing in your car every morning. It's 6 a.m. and it's not great.
That's the part of the country where it used to be that if you didn't pack enough like rock hard biscuits and boiled belt jerky, you were gonna have to eat your babies and stuff at some point through the winter.
Yeah, and many did, and they had to do that.
Many did. I live in Massachusetts, and it gets fairly cold. It's not the misery that it is in some places, but that feeling, dude, of it's negative anything. Once it's negative degrees out, it's just trash. But
It
having to
just
start
feels
your
not
car in
fair
that.
just to be negative. You're like, what? It's gonna be, and how am I gonna have like a positive day if it's negative degrees outside? That's
Yeah,
just not a
because
possibility.
you're in physical pain. Like especially if you forget to warm up your car, you're literally like in physical pain for a while before your car warms up enough for you to. I mean, probably just in time for you to get where you're going. It's your hands hurt. You can't touch the steering wheel. It's so fucking cold. Like it's like holding on to
Yeah,
ice.
yeah.
You
Oh,
you pull your
the amount of
sleeves down
times
over your hands and shit.
yeah, the amount of times in the morning I was like driving my mom to work or myself to school, like this, just like with my hands like tucked and just like kind of
Yeah,
like to keep it, center, but like mostly just trying not to touch the wheel. It's awful. I think cars are better now too. I sound like I'm talking about like from a really long time ago, but like it literally is just like the 2010s to now car wise. I think they're better at getting warmer.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like some places they play this the floor is lava as kids, and like where you grew up, it's like you play the steering wheel as dry ice.
That's how it feels.
Speaking of dry ice, I actually just I touched accidentally dry ice for the first time, not understanding that this package that I got had dry ice in it to keep whatever I bought cold, and I just went to take it out, presuming it was like a regular ice pack, and I was like, why the fuck does my hand feel like it's on fire? And then I start Googling like what that can actually, but apparently you can get frostbite very quickly from that. That was a new experience for me. So I appreciate being able to tell everybody that. Anyway, moving on.
We really
Yeah.
map out these segues well.
Yeah. I know.
Okay,
All right.
so all right, not to jump into it too ham-fisted here, but Salt Lake City, you
Mhm.
grew up Mormon.
Obviously, everyone thinks Lutheran, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, yeah, I grew up Mormon, and that's how I got to be this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I don't have a preamble for it, other than like, yep.
Yeah. Was it something that you were involved in, that you were not necessarily obviously as a kid you're not making that choice, but were you involved in that from like for your entire childhood? Was that a lifer thing, or was it like parents found the
Yeah,
Mormon church when you were like older or elementary school or something like that?
no, good question. It was very much just the classic. I forget that people's like convert, or like people's parents convert when they're in elementary school or their kids or something like that, because I was just like sort of raised in it, and that was just like our my parents were that, and their parents were, and their grandparents were, and it's just
Really?
like,
That's
they
hella retention.
they traced. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was one of those lines that did that. I think the retention kind of ended with my parents and my generation, to be honest. But like, yeah, going back, I know there are like grandparents that can trace their family line like back to the pioneers, and so they were like the OG Mormons. And I'm from a line of OG converts that probably goes back to like Missouri, where they converted or something like that.
They were
Yeah.
chased out with like firebrands and pitchforks.
Yeah, that's what they like to talk about. They
Never
won't let you
mistakes.
forget it. They go, "Hey, they were mean to us a really long time ago. Remember?" And then we had to go because everybody else was mean. And then we didn't make any mistakes and do anything wrong ever.
Yeah, and then they're all like, they were mean and chased us out, and then ironically they did the same thing to black people until the 70s, right?
Yeah, but they don't tell you that part.
Yeah. It's interesting
Yeah. Whatever.
to gloss over that.
So, okay, I feel like Salt Lake City, that area is such a it's not like an insular community, but it's like so distinctive, and I don't know. I think people who didn't grow up anywhere near that, like I feel like we don't really have a great idea of what the culture is like there. I mean, what's church? Like church for us was like every time the doors were open. It was Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. I went to a Christian school. Like all the same people all the same time. What was that for you?
Um, I would say it's similar. I would say it's similar in that sense that like the whole community revolved around the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not just, not just any church. Um
The one true
uh
church.
yeah, the one true church of the Lord, and everybody else is wrong. It was something that was like interwoven into the community. I don't know how much everyone here knows about Mormonism, but essentially, like, you have well, let's just go back a little bit to the inception of the territory of Deseret. It's like what people need to understand about that area is, however insular or not it is now, it was a place that started as a territory established by the Mormons. That's like what the territory of Deseret was. And the prophet of the Mormon church at the time, Brigham Young, was like the governor of that territory. And, so it's like it was like a theocratic government, and the church sort of controlled the government, and you can argue still does. And so everything that was the community within just politics and whatever was centered around this specific faith. So then fast forward, you still have a lot of that structure in place still. So all the community structures are like split into wards and stakes and all that. And when you're in a ward and you're a bunch of people who go to the Mormon church, most people get essentially what are these assignments, like traditional churches. If you have like a pastor or a priest or something, they went to divinity school and then they get hired by a specific church to get paid to be a church guy. It's not like that in Mormonism. You literally, if you're involved in the church for the most part and you have the priesthood or are just involved, you get some type of assignment that is makes it like you're involved, and it's kind of your part-time job to help this whole community run. And so that's why it's like very heavily bureaucratic and hierarchical. And then they have like the quorum of the 70 and the quorum of the 12 apostles and the Mormon prophet. It's like the whole thing is like this big corporate hierarchy of a religion. So yeah, that made everything in life sort of about that as well.
I feel like I've started The Witcher video games like 4 times, and about like 2 days into it, I'm like, this is too much lore. I can't get into it. I feel like Mormonism's kind of like that, where it's like
It is.
it's so many layers, and yeah, it's hard to follow if you're not familiar with the structure. I feel like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. It's something that's so layered and specific. I mean, it's something that took me, they tell you it over and over again, but it took me my entire childhood to like know all that stuff. And then you just know it and you go, you're not looking at it from the outside being like, oh, this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of lore. This is a complete other world of stuff. Just like the way that structurally and then just like in the belief system and how that developed. And I was just thinking about that level of lore because recently I was telling a friend like it doesn't really so much happen anymore, but I used to fully get like US presidents and Mormon prophets confused, like who they were, because it was all you would just learn about these like old white dudes that were in charge. And in Utah, you learn about that in the same breath as like U.S. presidents, and so sometimes I'd get like which ones were which confused.
You thought it was like Lyndon Brigham Johnson?
Yeah. Well, there's what is it? No, this one's even worse than that. The example is there's the president Woodrow Wilson, and in Mormonism there is a Mormon prophet named Wilford Woodruff. Something Woodruff. Sorry, real quick, I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, go for it. Can't be getting your old prophets wrong there, man.
Wilford Woodruff. Yeah. So I would get Wilford Woodruff and Woodrow Wilson confused as like who those people, because it's essentially the same thing. At least to
See,
me as a child, you know?
yeah, see, I could
Important
see why
fact.
that's tough. I then you could just be like me and never have known any of the presidents other than like the big hits, like your
Yeah.
Washingtons and your Lincolns. Everyone else was just before my time.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of why. And then it's like, oh, well, I have all these prophets in my head, but those guys are not. You just thought of it as the same thing. And then living in Utah too, like there's Pioneer Day, which is July 24th. And so they celebrate it like another 4th of July. So you like, it's really when you're growing up in that world, it feels like uh Mormonism and the whole Mormon thing just like is how America is. It's like, oh yeah, we celebrate this holiday of America and then this holiday of Mormon Utah. Like it's just the same thing twice.
That's what. So there's a huge emphasis for people growing up in like on Mormon history, not just
Mm-hmm.
belief
All
and
Well,
40
theology.
years of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. Yeah, I guess how far back does it go? Okay, so like growing up Christian, it's like Christian history is like obviously a couple thousand years. But is any of that do the Mormons call back to any of that, or do they really kind of keep to like the foundation of Mormonism and then kind of leave out everything else prior to that?
Um it depends on uh h- what we're talking about. Like are we talking about like public education or like in schools or just like church Sunday school stuff? Because that's two different answers.
I
Oh,
guess
so
like
actually,
public education, right? Like education wise, like my school, all we talked about was Christian history.
Mm,
So that was the focus of every era that we looked at was like, well, where were Christians during this period, you know?
right.
the
I
public
would say
education there would have brought in a lot of like Mormon concepts just because it's Salt Lake City.
yeah.
Okay, this is
Uh,
interesting. I had
Well, it's not like it's Mormon concepts like they would explicitly teach you that stuff in
okay.
schools, but I do remember like it is just the version of the same way the United States. I've been thinking a lot about how Mormonism and the Mormon narrative and everything that it is just sort of like a microcosm of the American narrative where it's like we were religiously persecuted. So we went to this place and then established a system that was based on white males and then persecuted others. Like it's sort of the same thing. So,
Ah,
yeah, right. Interesting. In uh, where I was growing up in schools, they would tell you a lot of like pioneer history, for example, and but of course, like there is that you know correct version of history that you're supposed to know, and especially within the church, they like tell you what the history was that like how the pioneers got chased out and went across the plains and then established this new place. But then they really downplay a lot of the weirder parts when it came to like polygamy and underage marriage and genocide and slavery and stuff like that. So it's like yeah, there was an emphasis on Mormon history in that regard, but then there was like not the full picture that we got. And then as far as like ancient history, there's like stuff that was in the Book of Mormon about like the Israelites somehow coming and becoming Native Americans.
yeah.
They didn't
Yes.
talk about that stuff too much. I mean, there would be like church sort of history, but like it comes up and then they're like, and yeah, it's that, but they're like, it's not a detailed information type history that we got of like, in 17 whatever the Christians were here, or even further back, 16 and 1500s Christians were, because there was no Mormonism. So it's like, well, the history that's relevant is like back in the ancient times when the Nephites and Lamanites were doing things, and then flash forward to 18 whatever when Joseph Smith quote unquote finds the golden plates.
Oh my god, that's so cool. I really like the comparison between the way that they keep the histories nice and tight, like in the same way that your U.S. history education is. It's easy to just dog on. I mean, it's easy to dog on everything, but when you look at Mormonism, there's like the strange beliefs, and it's like, oh, let's just give them a hard time without really taking a good look at how everyone else also seems to handle history. So I think that's an interesting comparison. When you were in it, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, it's just it was just realizing in a similar way where I like realized all this stuff that they just like did never tell me about when it comes to uh whatever that story was about them like killing a bunch of Native Americans and sort of burying that,
I
or
mean,
just how they treated
Israelites.
black people. Yeah, the Israelites. Um and it's just like, you know, the like obviously you want people who you want to adhere to a certain ideology to understand a certain version of history. And it's like, well, that's what Mormonism did in its own way, and that's what America did. And then like if you leave Utah and Mormonism, or you leave America and you talk to people from other places, they'll go like, hey, remember when you did all this stuff? And you're like, I wasn't even taught that. And it's like, yeah, why would they tell you that?
Yeah, I know.
I have a Mormon history question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious because like Joseph Smith was murdered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it your understanding of it? Do you think that Brigham Young was he like the heir apparent, kind of chosen by Joseph Smith to succeed him, or do you think that they had kind of like a Lenin and Stalin sort of relationship, where like Lenin really didn't want Stalin to be the next guy in the chair, kind of was like
Mm-hmm.
suspicious of him and stuff, but most ambitious dude and willing to do whatever he needed to do to get the job. I mean, what's your feeling on that?
You know what? I actually don't know. What they would tell you is that Brigham Young was like the heir apparent, and then they sort of do that thing where they hand wave about like, yeah, and at the time there was some people who didn't really agree about who should take over, blah blah blah, and then some people split off and whatever. But they like don't they tell you about it, but they don't get into the details of it that much. So what you're saying right now, like I'm sure that was, I don't know if that was like a situation or how much of it was a situation, because I genuinely was just not told about that and wasn't given like the research or information. So it's like he could have not been. I actually wouldn't put it past, knowing who Brigham Young is and the way he did a lot of political maneuvering and the way he wanted power. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the situation, but I don't know.
Was polygamy, was that Brigham Young's thing?
Well, he definitely went hard for polygamy. I think it was established with Joseph Smith. I'm pretty sure. Yes, it was. But I mean, people can check me on that if they hear it. I don't care. But I know Brigham Young definitely did, and he
Just went
really
hard in
ran
the
with
paint on
that.
that one.
Yeah, he had a lot of, wives and stuff like that. So it was certainly Joseph's thing, I think, but in my mind it's much more Brigham Young's thing than it was Joseph Smith's thing, because he was establishing, like, he literally took everybody away so that they could be polygamous.
I
Oh,
feel
So
like
yeah.
that's polygamy is such a cult leader thing. Like they all do it. Like if they last long enough, pretty soon they have multiple wives. It's just like the cult leader move, and I feel like that's why you see so many of them going back to. That's another thing I was going to ask you. Okay, so I kind of like spiraled off on cults like several times as a typical pathetic adult.
before he got
But
into sales, he was trying to figure out how to make his mark and really considered starting a cult, and then just got into like MLM shit, and now he's just a sales manager. He took the easy way out, really. If he put in a little more work, he could have been taking people's wives and
if I was just
creating
more of
multiple
a
families.
go-getter,
Yeah,
You really could. You're a handsome guy. You could, if you really, you get the right haircut, you get the suit on and talk a bunch of shit. I mean, yeah, maybe it could work.
Thank you. I like that. Yes, I do have thick shoulders, and I feel like that's necessary as a cult leader.
Yeah, fills in
Yeah,
that suit coat real nice.
or being very tall. I think that's the other one. You need a length or a height and or a width.
That might be what undid me on the
Yeah.
plane. So there's like all of these like super weird, sometimes violent offshoot cults that spring out of Mormonism. And there is out of Christianity too, you know. I mean, of course, but Mormonism has like quite a few.
Yeah.
Did you guys like, I'm sure they didn't teach you about any of those, but did you guys as kids, like, did you talk about those at all? Was it like, it was something that you knew, like the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints or the Children of Thunder or any of those?
I definitely knew about FLDS because that was, I think, especially for the time. Because what's his name? What was the guy's name that ran
Warren
that? Jeff
Jeffs.
something? Warren Jeffs. I always call him Jeff something. It's Warren Jeffs. That I remember being a thing because while I was growing up, some big story that I don't even think I remember understanding happened where he had a bunch of teenage wives and then the FBI had to go in and get him, I'm pretty sure. And so I remember that being a big thorn in the side of Mormonism and people talking a lot about like that's them and we're us. And also the problem is in popular culture at this time that was before the Book of Mormon musical, and so a lot of people like got a lot of people confused because of how many offshoot cults there are. It just popularly in the US, the casual person gets Mormonism confused with the million Mormon cults that have offshot. Like people assume that if I tell them I was raised Mormon, they think that I was raised in like the weird like cult situation. And I wish that would be so much cooler if I was, but I wasn't. I really wish that I was, and I could have all my cult stories and stuff. But no, it was just
And
like
honestly, if you freed
weird watching
yourself from a
it.
cult, like you would be, I mean, that would just launch you. You could sell a book on that shit too, easily.
Right.
So
They would have kicked you out of Latter-day Saints or the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints because they did their best to get rid of young men because
Yeah,
they take up
because you could
the
challenge Warren
eligible.
Jeff.
dude, so when you were like,
There's a great documentary. It's recent too. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
I mean, it was like last year. But if you haven't seen that documentary, Keep Sweet, about the FLDS, man,
Yes.
it's so
Well,
good.
it's funny because these things come out. There's like Keep Sweet, and I think there was maybe another one, and then there was like Under the Banner of Heaven that just came out, and people are constantly asking me, they're like, "Did you watch this?" I'm like, "No, no, I didn't
No,
watch."
I want to forget.
Yeah, I'm trying to forget. No, I didn't watch it. I should. But I'm like, no, that's not.
well,
I don't want to yet.
that's how I feel about all
your
the.
escapism, though.
That's how I feel about all the like ex-evangelical, ex-Christian things. Like, God forbid, the Jerry Falwell thing. Casey and I went to Liberty University, so when it's like, I don't know, I invested enough of my life into that story to not have to sit down and watch a Hulu movie about it. And it's like,
Right.
as these things pop up, you're like, yeah, I feel like I just already know that enough about that to not have to subject myself to like 3 hours of triggering. And it's like,
Right. It's like, well, did you watch? It's like, I was there. I don't need to watch it. I know what happened.
I'm trying to see
happened.
my fat little teenage self like waving in the background, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
when you
that
were
was
growing up,
I
did you
oh, go ahead.
yeah, were like when you were growing up, were you like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, I don't know how like the buy-in works for kids, because it's like, okay, I'm thinking about it in the sense of like, I knew a bunch of kids who grew up Catholic and they were like, yeah, I'm Catholic. And they were into it because it's just their family tradition. That's what their family did. And then like but they never had a real, like, I need to tell people about this, like a solid buy-in. And then there's like evangelical little boys and girls like Casey and I, where it's just like, everyone needs to know about this. Like, it is my passion. I need this, and so does everybody else. Like, what was your level of buy-in as a young Mormon boy?
As a young Mormon, I remember being into it, dude. I was really like, I went hard. I was, for my childhood self, probably between like, before I turned, maybe up until I want to say 15 or so, which is when I started like being able to understand the concept of logic. I was really, really into it. Like, because there was a sense of like, there is this pride that came from being good at doing Mormonism, especially within the community. And it was a community that I felt otherwise ostracized from. I'm black, everybody else around me is white. I was adopted into the church, so I think that even the factor of being adopted and then being somebody who was like faithful was something that was celebrated as a win to the people in
Oh, wow.
like my
Yeah.
community. So they're like, "Oh, you're so spiritual, you're so faithful, blah blah blah." So then I was really into it because I was getting a lot of validation from it, and as it turns out, I didn't like church enough. I just like validation,
Yeah.
and
I feel that so much. I feel like that had to do a lot of my, like, getting into it was like, this is where I get the validation, like, and the people pleasing. And because that's the kind of person I am, like, if I was born into a different environment, I would have found that somewhere else, but I found it there. And that's why I dove in. Sorry, I cut you off.
yeah, no, it's exactly that, and I felt really like, I remember it was just something that I would get complimented with a lot, that was just like, "You're very faithful, you're very, spiritually correct, and you're very you're doing such a good job, like, being a Mormon." So I was, like, into it. I would try to, I would do all the tithing prayers where you like do the sacrament prayers where you go up and like bless the sacrament, and I would be very involved for the time that I was in it, just because I really wanted people to think that essentially that I was going to the celestial kingdom. And so yeah, and then it started falling apart when I just like became more cynical and got access to the internet.
Yeah, there it is.
Snakes unite.
I'm in school, and like grad school, and I was just doing, like, my last semester I had to do like a research project on um it's protective factors for kids. And at this
Mhm.
point in time, this day and age, it's like the internet was like one of the biggest. It's obviously the internet is a terrible place to spend a lot of time, but for kids who are like like LGBTQ community, kids who are minorities, it's like when they grow up in religion, and they're like they know, like they start realizing that they're gay, and they're like, fuck, like, I know what this means for me. The internet is one of the most like life-saving tools, just because they that's where they use it for good. They like find communities, and they do a lot of research, and they hear new ideas and opinions. It's like, internet is such a protective factor for people trying to figure out how to like navigate their way through something like that, where you're like, I'm the only one in this area that's thinks that I know if I talk about this here, it's going to be a giant problem.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about it. Like, if like let's any obvious statement that can be extrapolated from this and all the terrible things aside, the thing that the internet did is it connected us, that made us unsiloed from other people in our geographic areas, which
Mhm.
is why from you could track probably the time when I was growing up, and like the rate of people, or the percentage of people that were Mormon in Utah to now, and I'm gonna guarantee both with population growth, but just like with how people are, that percentages plummeted, even though it might be still a pretty big percentage because it's where everybody is. But I remember growing up, I remember hearing it was like 50 and now it might be like 30, which is a pretty big drop, even if
Yeah.
it's still a lot of people.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, the evangelical exodus it's going through the same thing, and it feels like a lot of that has to do with internet access. Like, oh, you're telling me that there's another way to, even for people who maintain a level of spirituality, it's like, you're telling me there's another way to read this and think about this that just kind of flew under the radar for the past 20 years.
Yeah, and you need other access to other ways of thinking. They didn't give you that. They actively discouraged going out and like reading other things or hearing other things. And when it's everybody or feels like everybody in the community, and if you say something inflammatory, half the people in a room would get really upset, even if you're not at church on a Sunday. Like, that is repressive to other forms of thought. And if you don't have access to it, yeah, you're going to stay Mormon for a long time, and you wouldn't even have considered that there's another way. Like, that's what the big problem was. And then you start learning about stuff and you go, oh yeah, maybe I can make up my mind for myself whether I want to engage with this or not.
I'm surprised Salt Lake City doesn't have their own internet yet.
They could have gotten out of it by having their own specific internet,
like North Korea.
yeah.
All it links to is Kim Jong-un's like Wikipedia page, and it's like, he was born under a shooting star by a unicorn.
Yeah, you shouldn't put that out. That's a decent idea. I'll probably try that.
Maybe I'll try that, and that's how I'll make my first bag.
There you go.
Did you have friends there that were kind of going through the same thing, or was it mostly like online that you were meeting people who were like defecting from this?
Neither. I never met anybody online that were well, one time there was an interesting thing that happened. One time I was in seminary, which, by the way, seminary in Utah, if you go to a Utah public school in middle school and high school, you can get I think is it 8th grade or 9th grade it starts. You can get a free period. What's done is you get a free period from school, and they let you out of school, and then through the church you sign up for seminary classes, and the seminary building would be like right off campus. Like, you'd have to walk off campus, but right where the fence was, or where like another parking lot was off the campus, is where the seminary building was. So it's like, that was the level of separation of church and state in Utah, where it's like, oh yeah, you can have a free period if you want, so you can go to your religious class, and you go for that period, and they teach it like a class, but it's all Mormon stuff, and then you come back and they like grade you and stuff, and it's like whatever. So I was in seminary, and I think I signed up to like text people in the class. It was like when cell phones and stuff were relatively new to be able to be used by teenagers. And I texted people in the class, like, to remember to like read this scripture so that for next week or whatever.
That was a class assignment?
Yeah, it was like a class, because it was, religious class. So I got to sign up to like be the accountability person to like text everybody like, remember to read this for class. And somehow I got a wrong number, and I texted somebody who was like very much not Mormon, and they were like, and I think they realized that I was a teenager, because they were a little more mad at first, but then they kind of softened. And I don't remember exactly what the interaction was, but it was just like them being like, hey, like, I'm not doing this, I'm not this person, and I don't want to be like this like cult thing. I think they came at me being like it was a cult, and I was like, oh, this is a seminary class. And but then I said some sort of like proselytizing type thing, this like reflexive sort of testimony bearing that they teach you to do. And then this person sent this message that was just like, look, I know you think this is the only way to think about things, but it's not. And they're telling you to do this all the time, but you should always just read and research and never stop doubting this idea. And it was like weird because it was this like a stranger, and they always tell you to never doubt, and then this person's like never stop doubting, and I'm like, what? And it was something that really stuck out in my mind. It's not like the moment that I started departing from, Mormonism and stuff, but it is like one of the first times I somewhat engaged in a conversation about the religion that wasn't just somebody like shit talking it and being like, that's stupid, or like supporting it. There was like somebody that was just like, yeah, like just maybe not. And I was like, huh.
That is fascinating. And that, dude, you should stow that away as like a future screenplay idea.
Yeah.
Like,
or just
that's the inflection point where like this young kid who grew up in the church and stuff like that starts to like rethink his belief and everything, and that would be a great movie.
Yeah. I mean, really what the inflection point was for me in a real way was when I started getting interested in comedy. It was that, because there were so many podcasts out where people would talk about all sorts of things. Pete Holmes' podcast, he would talk about religion and stuff. And I remember just being a fan of Bo Burnham, and I was like, oh, this is my favorite. He makes the songs. And I listened to the podcast, and at the end of it, like they bring up religion, and he just goes on everything I was like dying over. I'm like, this is amazing. And it's me being like this 15, 16-year-old kid. And then he like launches into this tirade about like atheism and why stuff didn't make any logical sense. And it like, you might have had the same experience, but like you hear something that is so antithetical to your beliefs, but like made a lot of sense. He was making a lot of sense, and that was very scary to me. And the more and more I started like looking into comedy and the way comedians were and the things that they might have believed in, and like stuff that Carlin would say about God and stuff like that, I was like, it's weird because I like absolutely love this thing and these types of people who do this, and we all love, comedy TV shows, and for the most part, none of these people are Mormons, but I've been taught that this is the only correct way to live, and yet they're doing something that's really cool. So those things feel incompatible to me. And I don't understand how these people can do this thing, and we have to only live in one way. And that was really the starting point for me being like, maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
That is, it's fascinating because like that is very similar to how I really started, like, because I made some friends that were not Christians after I left college, and like that was a big deal to me because it was like, wow, these people are actually like cool. They don't seem to be constantly like second guessing me. Like they seem to be cool with me. However, whatever my worldview is and stuff, like they don't see me as a liability if I don't totally line up with them, which is cool, But then the thing that really like made me start rethinking like what I believed for me was I wish I knew how I ended up finding it or what episodes I listened to first, but I somehow stumbled onto Joe Rogan's podcast, and he had such like a wide, breadth of different people that were on there. And before that, I had been like a conservative radio guy. So I was listening to like Glenn Beck and just moron publication like all day.
Yeah. No, I remember Glenn Beck being on in every car that I rode in. Like it wasn't something that Mormon, I listened to. I don't know if maybe he is. I don't know.
He is, because he spoke at Liberty for a commencement, and there was like a lot of controversy because he was Mormon.
Oh shit. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. I remember Glenn Beck being on a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
What happened to him? Because I know the Blaze is still big, his like media network or whatever, but like he as a media personality really fizzled out.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about him in years.
He
It
just
was
got
just like,
overshadowed by a new kind of extremism.
Somehow
right.
he just did not make the curve. Like the road started to curve towards like Alex Jones and Ben Shapiro, and like he didn't take that right turn at Albuquerque, you know?
Yeah. That's crazy. It's wild that you bring him up because it really is like, oh, this is what adults listen to is Glenn Beck.
Yes.
Like it was on so much.
Can you imagine? I think back to the world of like that time in radio where you just had these people get 4 hours where they just talked by themselves.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah, and not being funny at all either. Just
Fucking
like the whole time. Never
like,
interviewing anybody.
dude,
they
Glenn
just had a
Beck,
list of like 6 things to be outraged about for 4 hours at a time. I'm surprised more of these people didn't just fucking die of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck was like my favorite because I listened to like him and Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Michael Savage. But Glenn Beck was my favorite because like he would crack jokes here and there and stuff. Like it was a little more entertaining. But I remember like the thing that soured me on him was that he was like constantly selling some stupid book. Like he had a new book like every 2 months, and it always just seemed so dumb. And I remember like it was like October or November, and he had this Christmas book coming out called like The Christmas Socks or something stupid. And every time he would get on there and pitch a book, he would cry or like pretend to cry. I'm like driving down the road, going to work, you know, like doing my thing, and he's on there for like the 50th time pitching a stupid book, and he's like, "This book is the book that your family needs this Christmas."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. There'll be something else to listen to. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. But it's good. It's good to, you know, not only have that option. Like that was who knows, had I grown up 10 to 20 years earlier, I may have just graduated from, you know, I think there are other forces at play also pushing me out of it. The fact that I'm black and I wasn't commonly accepted as much in social circles, just kind of like, you know, right away. It wasn't just like, it was, if people were going to be my friend, it was typically like that tokenism type thing, as opposed to like, we genuinely appreciate your friendship and you being a part of this group. It wasn't
as
that
opposed
so
to
much.
we got one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool that you're here.
Yeah. So the whole like way that I think there were a variety of factors that like kind of pushed me away from it, aside from just maybe I wouldn't have anyway. I think it might have taken longer, but I still think I would have found my way out. And also like growing up, I remember like my parents got divorced when I was 9. And before I was 9, that was when like everything was just like, everything is absolutely fine. I don't understand, aside from the fact that dad's a real wild card. I don't understand, you know, any problem that might be in the world. And then my parents like got divorced and we moved to a different place. And all my friends before then were like Mormon children. And then when we moved to my grandparents' house, like the people who lived closest to me, my 2 friends that I hung out with the most, were not Mormon, and they never tried to get me to not do it. They were like just not Mormons, and like truly the I use this word lovingly, but like dirtbag friends that were like these cut ups that were always like getting in fights, and they just wanted to like fix their cars, and they're like, yeah, man, fucking, you just gotta be a piece of shit, and you know, and just do all the sort of toxic masculinity things. I didn't fit in with them either, but I think it was through that like as I went to school and stuff, um middle school and high school, I never really wanted to be that close of friends with other Mormon kids. Like, I would always, in every context, be like the lamest kid, and people would make fun of me for being Mormon. And it didn't make me want to seek out other Mormons, because I'm like, those other people are honestly more annoying than me. Like, I don't like it. The interesting kids, the people that I like, are like not those people.
Yeah, I was homeschooled, and I often found I was like, most homeschooled people were like, oh my God, I cannot believe I have to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Like, you're 14 years old and you're still running around like a velociraptor in the church parking lot.
Yeah.
They were weird.
Yeah, it can be like homeschooling. I think Mormonism too, as a community and culture, can be very infantilizing. So you're like, there are these people who are weird because they don't know the social pressure of someone who's like, hey, like, don't act like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel
So
like
when you
there's a weird point in there too with, okay, there's if you have like that infantilizing influence there where there's kids that are lagging behind, you
Yeah.
know, there's always like some kid in the group that, you know, he's like 5 years behind in his development and what he thinks is cool and stuff, but he's becoming kind of a horny weirdo.
Oh yeah. Doesn't know
He's
what
like
to do about it.
doing real weird stuff. Like there was
Oh
a
yeah.
kid like that at our school that he was weird from day one. And like I remember he left for a while and then he came back to school years later as we were like juniors or seniors or something like that. And I remember him like running around with like the little kids because we were K through 12 in our school and all in one big room. So like I remember he's
Jesus
like,
Christ.
yeah,
yeah,
like that doesn't just
not the
scream
best
Chris
environment.
Hansen walking in.
No good. You gotta separate those buildings.
But I remember he was like running around with like the third and fourth graders, and he was getting real strange with like these younger, like to the point where like we, you know, as sheltered oddballs ourselves, we're starting to go, there's something you need to keep this kid away from the younger girls. Like we would like talk to a teacher about it, and it was yeah. There's always one kid that you're like, he goes from like, you know, drawing spaceships with crayons as a ninth grader to all of a sudden you're like, is this person a predator? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely. Well, it's just one of those things that it's like, what, hopefully, you know, not too dark of people like having whatever experiences that make them into that, but then also, at least where I'm from, just this maladjustment to the way sexual education is approached. So like, you get these people who these kids who have like no idea what to do with these feelings, and you're like, wow, that's I don't know. That's dicey.
Yeah,
That's all dicey.
it's like you plugged all the holes and it's just coming out the wrong. It's like just bringing leaks everywhere, coming out the wrong area.
there's plenty of like, I mean, somewhat adjusted men that have trouble with some of that stuff. I feel like I wish I could tell you who the guy was that made the video and stuff because it's really interesting. But there was this video that I watched a while back where this guy's analyzing movie tropes and stuff like that, and he had this like outline for a trope that he was talking about. He sees in like all these different movies that he called like Born Sexy Yesterday, and in it he's like talking about how there's so many movies. If you could look through like movies that you've watched as a you know, a kid or as a person, there's like this continual trope where like there's a woman that's a feature character in the story that doesn't know anything about the world around her. Like for some reason, she, you know, one of the ones that he uses as an example is like the fifth. God, what's the one with Bruce Willis where it's like in the
Oh, the
future?
Fifth Element.
The Fifth
Oh,
Element.
interesting.
So like, you know, you have this like female character who's kind of like scantily clad and attractive, but she's sort of like a baby like doesn't know anything
Mhm.
about the world around her, and she needs this like guy to teach her everything, you know, about the world around her. But then she also has like value in a way because she knows how to like fight and kill people or something. And slowly like falls in love with this dude who's like just teaching her how to put on pants and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Dude, think about how many movies that plays out.
No, I
That
mean,
is successful because that's a thing that like men have trouble with. They want like this person who, you know, no other man is a competitor for this person's attention because they're basically like tutoring them at life. It's weird. It's really weird.
yeah, that is odd.
Well,
Anyways,
yeah. Anyway, so okay, so you start like there's a disconnect. You start like shifting out. Like where's like what's the final like this isn't for me? And did it like fuck up relationship with family? Whereas it kind of I know that can happen
Mhm.
in those settings. What was that like for you?
Um, I had a couple different experiences that it wasn't one final thing because it was a transition of things that happened over I think a few years, and
Hmm.
I think it was an amalgamation of a lot of things, and I'll try to remember them all at once because it it's there are a few examples that come to mind. Um my parents' divorce was one of those that at risk of uh him getting litigious, my adopted father. Oh, I'm adopted, by the way. That's how. Oh yeah, I said that earlier. I never know what people know about me. Um
You said you
was
were adopted by the church. I've just from your comedy, I know you were adopted, but you did say you were adopted by the church. So maybe that
oh
might have been missed by you were adopted not by the church into the church, but that might have been
in
maybe
yeah,
missed that
into the church
adopted
in
by
the
a
sense
Mormon
that I was
family. Yeah.
adopted into a Mormon family for generations, not yeah. Anyway, so they got divorced, and or the process of them getting divorced was like he was really would like cheat a lot and be what the kids call abusive, and the kids and then he like one time I remember there was like this big like my mom caught him cheating. There was this big deal about it, and then they were like, I was like a child seeing this, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna like work it out and like go to the bishop a lot, and like you know how through Mormonism when you have like different issues and problems, like it's kind of I don't know what it is like now because I'm not in the church now, but like it the whole thing was sort of you go to the bishop. It's not like it's kind of like he's your therapist, but like he hears all the problems of everybody, and he's like
Mhm.
supposed to be like the priest or whatever.
it's like the
So they were like,
arbitrator, or like somebody who's trying to like help, like a marriage counselor.
I mean, but both like that's what the thing is. It's like
They're
you
all
have
things.
exactly. You have any issues, you need to repent. You're having marital issues, you're having this, you go to the bishop. And I just remember that being like a laborious situation where they were like trying to quote unquote save the marriage, even though my father was acting in a way that was, contrary to that, because that's like what you're supposed to do for Mormonism. And I just like realized how much sort of I was noticing how much pain my mom was in all the time. And like, especially my dad having this like sort of man comes first patriarchal sort of mindset of like, she needs to cook and she needs to cook right and blah, 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 because like he's got the priesthood and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, how is it that this man has the priesthood, the power of God, and he gets to wield it, uh, but my mom doesn't, and morally she's a much better person than him. That didn't make sense
Yeah.
to me.
Huge disconnect.
So it was a big disconnect. So there was that. There was the LGBT stuff, Prop 8, that
That's right.
Oh, right.
there was all that. Um and I don't even remember what Prop 8 was specifically. I just remember Prop 8 being anti-gay or whatever.
It was
Um,
anti-gay marriage in California,
Anti-gay
right?
marriage. I think so, but Mormons were a big proponent of it, and it was a problem because I was like
Hmm.
getting into I was getting into high school and stuff, and um middle school and high school I started like knowing people who were gay, and back in the day, back in even the 2000s, like you experienced this, I'm sure, as a white straight dude. Like we were calling everything gay. Everything was gay. We're like gonna be just homophobic and whatever. But it was when it came to starting to know people for real and all this like anti-gay sentiment, it was like that's very this is weird because it'll everybody's acting like we're this like loving, kind religion and then like actually ostracizing people. And then when I started to realize that like us just like playing this game called Smear the Queer and calling stuff gay wasn't just like a harmless like this insult, but like actually a thing. I started and then people in Mormonism sort of like supporting those like the homophobic beliefs. I started like being not super cool with that. I had a friend in middle school who was gay and committed suicide because he was getting bullied by people. A lot of these people were Mormons, and it's so that was like one of those things that was just like this is the way people are feels very wrong. Um yeah. Uh that was one of those things that was like I don't think that this is a thing. And then just the same thing that was happening with like me getting involved in comedy and reading stuff and all that eventually just like sort of culminated in and the last thing was like so I stopped talking to my dad around 15 years old. And his father, my grandpa, would take me out to Grantsville, Utah, where they have like a property out there where we would work on stuff. And he would always like after that point, he would always be like, "Why aren't you talking to your dad? You got to talk to your dad again." And I was like, "But like the but he's not like somebody who should be involved in my life. Like I don't think that that's healthy." And he's like, "No, but you got to do it because, family and church and stuff like that." And I was just like, "This is bullshit. What are we talking about family? I'm adopted, you know? Like why is this sort of like, oh, it's blood, like this idea that people have. Well, that's already not true. So I don't know what we're doing here. So it was just like a variety of things like that. And I remember maybe it wasn't my final straw because I was already out of it. I went to Utah State University. I left home to go to college because I'm like, I gotta get out of this place. And I remember my freshman year, I smoked weed for the first time, and my friend, who I was like completely in love with, and she was still in Salt Lake, and um, I remember telling her about it. She had converted to the church when she was 17. And I remember telling her about it, and she really like freaked out and was like, "That's so bad. That's so awful." And I'm like, "Well, it's how is it awful?" She's like, "Well, it's illegal." And I'm like, "Yeah, but laws are, made up." And something that I learned from weed. And and it's so like I just saw that difference of like this person is so rigid. And also going back to your question of if it caused any relationship issues between family and friends and stuff, this person was like my best friend from elementary school on, and she was so rigid and so angry and so upset about this thing that like this doesn't really make sense why you would be so upset about this. And I was like, yeah, I guess that given all those things, this can't really be something great to adhere to. So up until that point, but definitely after that point, I was just completely done.
Christians get real render under Caesar when it comes to like marijuana, but not so much when it comes to like registering a handgun, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Did that so was that something that she stayed like upset about? Did that change the way that you felt about her?
Yeah, I mean, there was also we had other things going on. I was in love with her. She kind of was like, "Oh yeah, I think that you whatever, and then it was one of those like not knowing how to not be not understanding that this person's never going to give you the type of love that you want, and then she started dating somebody else sort of behind my back, and I was like, what the fuck? So we had other shit going on, but yes, definitely that
It's
was something that
I can't
changed.
date you because you're a drug addict now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would have been something like that, but then there was also like, there was that situation of, oh, my parents would never let me date you. And it's like, ugh, okay.
That's right. Your parents
Oy,
own you. I
boy.
forgot about that part where you're a
Yeah.
woman, so your parents do in fact own you.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
Now, okay, so obviously, like, the Mormons have changed some of their beliefs over the years,
Hmm.
and historically, they had some, like, really awful doctrine about black people. Like, was that something that you were aware of? I'm sure that wasn't talked about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I just started listening to this audiobook, Mormonism and White Supremacy, that is very good. That's going into the details of this stuff. Um, but I didn't. I had a small awareness of this. I remember my mom at different points telling me that like she would do this thing would be like, "Hey, if anybody ever says to you that like um you're cursed for being black, that's not true, that's not real doctrine, that's not, but she's like, if you interact with this form of racism, that's not true, don't believe that." And I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't know that, like, I didn't know how um like high up it went or who this came down from, basically. And I didn't know that it was like, just kind of written into doctrine that black people were lesser and stuff. And when they talk about it, they act like that's not what it was, that it was just like people that started kind of like randomly saying this instead of like people like Brigham Young saying stuff like this. So I wasn't even that aware of that while I was growing up, but then you would run into things here and there that people would say this stuff, and then um I remember having a seminary class where like them doing stuff where they're like, we're going to address this. And basically the Mormon thing about it is like they make this justification where like, well, only certain people in the past like had, at first it was like only this small group of like these tribes and whatever, and they break it down to like different like genealogy and ethnicity and stuff like that, where it's like, and now the priesthood is supposed to be like, it got, soft launched a bunch of times for whatever reason. um and so that was like their justification. And but they really tried to not talk about it so much. It was only through like other avenues where that kept coming up.
Were they a curse of Ham or a mark of
Yeah.
Cain kind of racist?
Yeah, Chris of Ham, Marco. No, both. I mean,
Okay.
both of those came up. It's hilarious that you would
Okay.
say that because it's like
Don't
both
worry,
of
that
them.
came up at Liberty University too. We had a college class in where this old ass should have been dead white guy was like one black kid in the class, and he starts talking about the curse of Ham. I can't remember if it was Curse of Ham or Mark of Cain. Either way, I know those both existed as a concept. And he starts talking about how, like, that's how we got black. It was like that framing, like how we got black people. And it's like this kid in the class, his eyes were like got huge, but in a sense of like, sadly there was like a comedy to it because he had just heard it so long apparently, and he was just kind of like was like, okay, here it is, I knew this was coming. And everyone else in the class was just like, don't look at him, like, you just keep your eyes straight. But everyone felt like so fucking weird. And that was the first time that because I grew up, I didn't grow up Southern Baptist, it was just evangelical, but that never came, like, I never, that was the first time sitting in that class that I heard that theory. And I was like, holy shit, like jaw dropping
Yeah.
weird to have a conversation like that at a university. Like, it's a real, like, there's some like real hard, like, scientific data back in that one.
Yeah, the fact that like the whole either one of the, I because both of our somewhat used interchangeably, it feels. But like, yeah, the fact that you would sort of just casually say that or believe that is just like, what that runs antithetical to everything we know about anthropology. But
Yeah. And I remember what's even more awkward is like the follow up to that. Like they say it as though it's a fact, and then listening to him like do that spiral of like, but let's look, but that doesn't mean that, and this is why it's not racist. It's like, oh, the explanation, like that, like let's get into why it's not racist is generally a good idea that you're getting into one of the most racist conversations you'll ever be a part of.
Yeah, here's why this like weird essentialism that these people are cursed and damned isn't racist, because God invented it. Okay, so God's a racist. Like, what are we talking about? And like, I do remember that as the same thing. That's the same thing that the same logic that was applied within Mormonism to like queer people and still is today, where it's like, here's why it's not homophobic what we believe. And like this weird, like really trying to split the difference of justifications and getting into the most like abstract version of logic to justify why like this sort of hate the sin not the sinner logic is not something that is just completely harmful to people. And it's like, no, like is like actively homophobic.
How could I be a homophobe when I'm the only one trying to tell them that they're going to burn in hell for all of eternity? I'm trying to save them.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a weird differential point between like fundamentalist evangelicalism and Mormonism, because like there's plenty of racism and evangelicalism, but it's not
enough to go around.
Doctrine, you know, like that wasn't a theory that I heard. It was it was people's own theories where they got racist. But like homophobia, that one, it was like, well, refer to the book,
right?
And it is weird the way that those communities respond to like cultural change, like the from a survivalist standpoint as an institution, like the smart thing would be to like say, this was wrong, it was never right, and like the church has gotten this wrong for a long time, and we're not going to preach that anymore. But instead, because that kind of undermines the fundamentalism of the whole thing, so it's like, no, it wasn't. It's not that it was wrong. It was that, people like since have misinterpreted it, and here's what it actually means, and blah blah blah. And it's so dumb. It's so dumb.
Right. There are all these mental jumping jacks to like justify what was just like wrong, but like exactly to your point is, it would undermine the idea that, for example, like if Brigham Young was like, some slavery is okay, and people like flip-flopped on slavery and whether or not it should be allowed and stuff, it would like undermine the fact that this guy's got a connection with the omnipotent God if he's just like having these issues. So it's, you gotta do a little bit of tap dancing with the logic to make that happen. You gotta stretch some stuff.
Meanwhile, there's like a whole like group of leaders out there who have like wrongly predicted the end of the world like 6 times and never lost a member of their congregation.
Right. Like, well, you're like, why? When is wrong just wrong? There's like a deadline. It's like, hey, stop. If you don't know, just stop predicting, Tell me when you have something good. Don't give me a bunch of random bullshit and go, nah, I'll take another shot next time.
Whoops. Sorry about your retirement.
Yeah. That was my experience.
How did like purity culture and stuff factor in for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like one of the fundamental pieces of like probably how, I think purity culture is one of those that like, if there's ways that the religion sort of fucks you up, I think it's definitely purity culture. I mean, partly I wasn't so affected by it obviously earlier, because like I don't think anybody was trying to have sex with me anyway, but it was like one of those things that like I was 12 years old thinking that I was addicted to pornography, like way before I actually was, because it's just like, oh, I looked at a boob online one time. I wanted to see a boob and I looked for it and I found it. I must be a fucking psychopath. So that was definitely a thing. Like that is like I would say that purity culture sort of feels like the bedrock of what the culture is in certain ways when it comes to like being a single unmarried person. Like that's a gigantic part of your identity, is just the fact that like I'm going to, you know, not or I'm going to abstain. And like, I think we are all three aware of the massive amount of issues that causes for people's mental health, and especially how it intersects with all that stuff about queer people. Is like you have to, if you're going to have any sexual contact with somebody, you better be married, and it better be a temple marriage too, because then it's still, you know, in not correct. So yeah, of course, like kids were dry humping and all that stuff, and everybody went on their missions at 18 so they could come back and get married at 21, and all of that. It's definitely like a heavy factor. I feel like I'm being broad about it because I feel like there's so many things to say about it that is like, yeah.
That I feel like, yeah, and there's a lot of it that's hard to shake off after you decide that you're like, I'm done with this and I'm not doing it anymore. Like I feel like the after effects of purity culture, it just as a grown man, it's hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those that you have to um approach, uh I think, with a lot of like intention about like therapy and stuff, because it really gets in your head, and I think it crosses wires in all these ways. And that's why, within these churches and in the Mormon church as well, there's rampant sexual abuse, and that is essentially unchecked or swept under the rug because the people are like, there's purity culture and there's shame spirals involved. I mean, like we all have that going on culturally anyway. So when you add this layer of like religiosity on top of it, I mean, these uh temple garments, the Mormon special underwear. Um, they have these prayers like sort of laced into the underwear like itself. And like I was doing this joke about it that like, what is adhering to a chastity law if not essentially just like a BDSM relationship with God? There's there's this man who goes, "You don't come until I tell you to come." It's like, that's what it is. That's all we're doing to our brains.
That's so true. It's just like it's like a soft cotton penis cage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what it is. And
Cucks
it's
for
like,
Christ.
so yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what people's, relationship to their sexuality is at that point. So like, yeah, I think I don't know. That's sort of my thing on purity culture. There needs to be a lot of, and now they're starting to finally acknowledge those issues, but there needs to be a lot done in that regard, because unlike with Catholicism, I don't think that there's going to be this like big sort of like spotlight kind of thing. There's kind of been people doing like protests about bishops, like and their sort of sexual abuse of minors, even if it's not actual, even if they don't abuse them in that way, which a lot of them do. But even the structure of like going to a bishop is like, okay, you want to repent for something, you got to go to this bishop, right? If you're a kid who feels like, oh, I got horny and now I feel bad. I masturbated to porn. I feel bad. Then you gotta go sit in this office with this fucking 50-year-old man who didn't go to divinity school or anything, and then like tell this dude, and then the way that it works is this dude asks you questions about it. That's not something that should be happening at all. There should not be an old man and a kid in a room, no supervision, and him asking you sexual questions.
Begging for more details.
Dude, don't say gay at school, though. You know.
Yeah, but exactly. Yeah, like, don't be gay, but like, we're gonna have this old man ask you the things that make you horny. Like,
what? And you said you saw boobs, right? Now, describe these boobs to me. Was one of them slightly bigger than the other?
Dude, do you think former Catholics are the only people keeping the phone sex industry alive?
They got to. They have to.
It's weird
God.
imprinting.
Ben, I want to, with the time we have left, I do want to talk about like your comedy and your shift into that. You've done cool shit. I mean, besides, like, you were a staff writer for Conan. You do shit for the Onion. You're a staff writer for the Onion right now, right? And
yes,
obviously you're.
I just to go back to the stuff that we were just talking about. I wrote an Onion headline like fairly recently that was like, Mormon argues that the sexual abuse in his religion is just as legitimate as any other faith. I was very proud of that.
That's good one, man.
It's like you were trained for that exact job.
Yeah. So your hard push into comedy when you started pursuing it as a career, like, what'd that look like, man? I mean, I feel like that's always it's like a sexy industry, and it's like a hard one to understand, and it feels dependent on like being in certain locations. Obviously in the middle of nowhere, like you're not going to just like find a comedy club and do it. Like you got to like really like make that conscious choice and pursue it. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like exactly that. I went to the Wise Guys Comedy Club. It was weird. I had this experience of like, I went to an open mic and then I tried to go back and they became like 18 and up and I was like, damn, so I can't, and this is like me as a teenager, so I'm like, I can't do this yet, but I'm interested in it. And then I turned 18, went to college, came back, did another open mic there, and then that was like right when they got their liquor license, so like now we're 21 and up, and I was like, I waited. And so like there was like a handful of stuff like here and there, like real quickly I'll go through, like I did some improv and stuff in college, and then right after I was like doing improv like in this little indie venue called the Comedy Loft in Ogden, Utah, but there wasn't a lot of stand-up outlets that I could go to. And then through all these podcasts and everything I was hearing, everybody was like, if you go to Chicago, number one, there's no industry there, so you can just like go and be creative and fail. And I felt like that's what I needed because I wasn't really good at anything yet. And Chicago has improv and sketch and stand up and like a vibrant big city. And I always wanted to live in a much bigger cosmopolitan area than Salt Lake. So I was like 20 and I just packed up all the shit that I had and just moved and started doing stuff and started trying my best, and it kind of just one thing led to another from there.
I don't even, so the idea of just relocating and giving something like that a shot is, I feel like there's like like if you're willing to do that, like you kind of have like a personality and a drive to make something like that work. I feel like it's the people who are like, I like the idea of this, and then it gets these kinds of careers require you to like make some major life changes, and I don't know how people have that in them. I feel like the idea of that unknown of like, I'll just move there is like always fascinating to me.
Yeah, but the thing is about most stuff, once you realize, I mean, coming from the place that I do and having the experience that I had, with most situations, it sort of feels like the thing that you're afraid of is not really that big of a deal. Um, at least in because it's like I did have like these same grandparents that were like, you got to talk to your dad again. I hadn't really been talking to them a lot, and I told them that I was going to go, and they got so scared. They're like, what are you going to do? How is it going to happen? And honestly, the truth is, like, with most stuff, you can kind of figure it out. You're going to figure it out or you won't. And then if you don't, like, then you'll have to, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, then I got to move back. All right. It's like there's no, I'm not going to explode. And so it wasn't like that scary to me. I mean, when you're that age, you don't really have a sense of your own mortality. And I was just like, well, the other option, I love this one thing. This is one thing that I want to do, and it seems like there are careers in it. The other option that I had was to stay where I was and live in Salt Lake City and navigate like not wanting to be Mormon around a bunch of people that didn't really accept me, and in a place that's like predominantly
Yeah,
white. It's
true.
just like I don't think this is my place, you know? I don't feel comfortable here. It doesn't really even feel like home, and I've grown up here. So like I was like, why not? Like
Yeah.
I don't think there's any I don't think that the idea of failure was not that it wasn't even an option, but it was just like not even something that could happen. I think simply trying to do something is a win.
Yeah. When nothing's worse than staying where you are. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, I'm not gonna stay here, so I let's just go do something. And if that doesn't work out, I'll do something else. And life is long, and you have, all sorts of other stuff that you got to deal with. So I think it was that people talk about how, oh, that must have been a big thing. It's like, yeah, in a way, and in another way, no.
yeah. How'd that lead to like comedy writing then? I feel like what's the connection there between like trying comedy in Chicago and then finding a connection to comedy writing?
Well, The Onion is based in Chicago,
Okay.
and I always liked sketch comedy, which the Second City is here, and so I started one of the first things I started doing is taking the Second City writing course. I didn't actually learn that much from it, but I did get to meet people that also wanted to make sketches, and then I started submitting for like the contributing freelance for Clickhole pretty quickly because I remember reading Clickhole in high school and just loving the absurdity of like how these headlines were. I wasn't even like The Onion was like something that I heard about and also loved because I'm like, oh, funny fake news. But Clickhole was like this new like BuzzFeed parody after BuzzFeed had come out, and it was just like the jokes of this are crazy. It's just insane with this internal logic, and I love that. So I started doing that, and then that eventually led to me like getting a contributing thing at the Onion, and then I did the Onion Fellowship, and then it was COVID, and then I went and did Conan because I had in that time gotten a manager, and then which leads us to essentially the present where I went back to the Onion in 2022, maybe top of 2022, and now I'm here.
Nice. That's interesting. What's on the horizon for you? Where are you headed now?
Um, I want to get back into TV. I was really set if Conan hadn't ended his show, I would still be there right now, and I think
Okay,
about
yeah.
that all the time. I think about that all the time. I was 6 months into an absolute dream job, and then he was like, "I'm not going to do this show anymore." I'm like, "But
But
this
what
is the
about
best thing
me?
that's ever happened to me." But this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. How could you stop? um uh so I want to get back to, TV. I got a couple pilots that I have worked on and am working on. I wrote a movie that I would like to get made that probably won't get made because movies, if you are not a famous guy, uh, don't really just get made without it taking a really long time. and it's a crazy script. So I really, the next thing is just like I would like to staff on a TV show, whether that be one of these political talk shows like The Daily Show. I got close to getting, and or scripted TV. I'm ready for that. That's sort of where my focus is right now. And then just like kind of tour around and do stand up, and selling tickets is weird and difficult now, and you kind of got to have a whole thing with that, and you got to have platforms, and it's a very tricky sort of place to the industry is very weird now, so I just want to be able to focus on like being able to create stuff that communicates the things that I feel about all this stuff. So that's hopefully where I'm going next career wise.
I heard
That's
the
awesome,
Daily
man.
Wire's hiring.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay. Oh yeah.
You could be like the
Gutfeld.
follow up to Candace
Gutfeld's
Owens.
too.
Yeah.
They need a male Candace Owens. I don't know. Just a thought. Look, I mean, if
Male Candace Owens, I don't know. Could be.
you
Could be. I could say. Look. I grew up like I'm a dyed in the wool Mormon boy, and a lot of these things these black people are saying are honestly out of line. There is no systemic racism.
you got the
Hey,
part,
look,
dude. I mean,
if at some point you need us to delete this episode so you can like boost your resume, you say the word.
Right.
We'll do
They can't look.
it. Well, dude, it's been really great talking to you. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, man.
All right,
Ton of
where
fun.
can people? Sorry,
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. It was great.
where can people find you?
Oh, just find me at my Instagram and Twitter. It's just Skyler Higley, SkylerHigley. If you want to go to SkylerHigley.com, you can. But you know, that's got some stuff I've done on it. So Instagram, Twitter, my website.
TikTok before
Yeah.
it gets completely banned in the US.
Yeah, I mean, TikTok is sure. My TikTok too. I don't even know what to do with that sometimes. I'm like, do I focus on that and get all these followers like people do, or is it gonna get banned? So I should never worry about it.
I know. Well, that's how I found you, and
There
so
we go.
I'm thankful for that. You're
All right. Well, then I'll focus on it more.
So the bits I've seen from there, it's like I found you, and then I just like flicked through every single one of your posts until I got all the way to the bottom. So I was
Follow
hooked.
the steps in the sand.
Very funny, and everyone should definitely go check it out. And hopefully things will work their way out, and you'll end up doing a show in or around Massachusetts someday, and I can come
Oh,
out.
absolutely. Oh, I definitely will. That'll be soonish. I don't know.
Perfect. Well, I'll keep an eye out.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and all right, everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.